June 6, 1944. The world held its breath. Across the English Channel, a vast armada of ships prepared to unleash the might of the Allied forces onto the beaches of Normandy, France. This was D-Day, the day that marked a turning point in World War II, the day the tide began to turn against Nazi Germany's iron grip on Europe. The stakes could not have been higher. For years, the Nazi war machine had rampaged across Europe, crushing nations and enslaving millions. The liberation of France and indeed the fate of Europe rested on the success of this daring invasion. Codenamed Operation Overlord, D-Day was the culmination of years of meticulous planning, unparalleled logistical feats, and unwavering courage. This was a day of heroes, a day where ordinary men from diverse nations rose to face extraordinary challenges. From the beaches of Normandy to the hedgerows beyond, a generation of soldiers fought with unmatched bravery and determination, forever etching their names in the annals of history. This is their story. By 1944, Europe was a continent shrouded in darkness. The once vibrant cities and towns were now shadows of their former selves, cloaked in the gloom of war and occupation. The streets that once echoed with the sounds of daily life were now silent, save for the distant rumble of artillery and the mournful cries of those who had lost everything. The Nazi war machine, fueled by a toxic ideology of hate, had swept across Europe, leaving a trail of devastation and despair in its wake. Cities were reduced to rubble, and entire communities were uprooted and displaced. The iron fist of the Third Reich showed no mercy, crushing any semblance of resistance with brutal efficiency. Propaganda filled the airwaves, poisoning minds and sowing seeds of fear and division. From the frozen plains of Russia to the sun-drenched shores of the Mediterranean, the shadow of tyranny had fallen. The vast expanse of Europe, with its diverse cultures and histories, was now a battleground. In the east, the brutal winter campaigns on the Russian front tested the limits of human endurance. In the south, the Mediterranean's azure waters were marred by the constant threat of naval battles and air raids. France, once a beacon of liberty, had endured 4 long years under the oppressive heel of Nazi occupation. The streets of Paris, once filled with artists and thinkers, were now patrolled by soldiers and marked by the symbols of occupation. The French people, resilient and proud, faced daily hardships and the constant threat of persecution. Yet, beneath the surface, the spirit of resistance simmered, waiting for the right moment to rise. The French resistance, a courageous but fragmented force, fought bravely from the shadows, yearning for the day when freedom's light would shine again. These brave men and women from all walks of life risked everything to sabotage the enemy and gather intelligence. Their clandestine meetings, often held in the dead of night, were a testament to their unwavering commitment to their country's liberation. Each act of defiance, no matter how small, was a beacon of hope in a land shrouded in darkness. Across the English Channel, Britain stood defiant, the last bastion of freedom in Western Europe. Under the steadfast leadership of Winston Churchill, the British people endured the Blitz and the constant threat of invasion with unyielding resolve. The island nation became a fortress, its factories and shipyards working tirelessly to support the war effort. Churchill's speeches, filled with determination and hope, rallied the nation and inspired the world. The United States, drawn into the global conflict by the attack on Pearl Harbor, had joined forces with Britain and the other Allied nations in a fight for global freedom. American troops, fresh and determined, crossed the Atlantic to stand shoulder to shoulder with their British counterparts. The industrial might of the United States was mobilized, producing the weapons and supplies needed to sustain the war effort. Together, the Allies formed a united front against the Axis powers, determined to restore peace and justice to a world in turmoil. The time had come to liberate Europe from the grip of tyranny, and the eyes of the world turned towards the French coastline, the chosen battleground for a confrontation that would decide the fate of millions. The meticulous planning and preparation for the D-Day invasion were a testament to the Allies' resolve. As dawn broke on June 6, 1944, the beaches of Normandy became the stage for one of the most significant military operations in history. The bravery and sacrifice of those who stormed the shores that day would forever be remembered as a turning point in the fight for freedom. The invasion of Normandy, codenamed Operation Overlord, was a military operation of unprecedented scale and complexity. General Dwight D. Eisenhower, the supreme Allied commander, faced the daunting task of coordinating a massive force of over 150,000 soldiers, sailors, and airmen from the United States, Britain, Canada, and other Allied nations. The plan called for a daring amphibious assault on a heavily fortified coastline stretching over 50 miles. 5 beaches, codenamed Utah, Omaha, Gold, Juno, and Sword, were chosen as landing zones. Each beach presented its own unique challenges, from treacherous tides and currents to formidable German defenses. To maximize the element of surprise and minimize Allied casualties, a sophisticated deception campaign was put into action. The Allies created a phantom army, complete with inflatable tanks and dummy landing craft, strategically positioned across from Pas de Calais, leading the Germans to believe the main invasion force would land there. This elaborate ruse, codenamed Operation Fortitude, proved highly effective in misleading the enemy. Section 4. Shadows in the Night, the Paratroopers Gambit. As dawn approached on June 6, 1944, the first Allied boots touched French soil. This marked the beginning of Operation Overlord, the largest amphibious invasion in history. The success of this operation hinged not only on the bravery of the soldiers storming the beaches, but also on the daring efforts of the paratroopers who had been deployed hours earlier. Under a moonlit sky, thousands of paratroopers from the U.S. 82nd and 101st Airborne Divisions and the British 6th Airborne Division boarded their aircraft, their faces grim, their hearts pounding with a mixture of fear and determination. These men knew the stakes were high. Their mission was to jump behind enemy lines, a task that required not just physical courage but also mental fortitude. Their mission was crucial but fraught with danger: to parachute behind enemy lines and secure key bridges and roads, disrupting German reinforcements and paving the way for the main landings at dawn. The success of the entire invasion depended on their ability to hold these positions until the main forces could arrive. The paratroopers faced a chaotic descent into enemy territory, scattered by anti-aircraft fire and strong winds. The skies were filled with tracer rounds and the roar of anti-aircraft guns. Many planes were hit, and paratroopers found themselves jumping into a maelstrom of chaos and confusion. Many landed far from their intended drop zones, alone and disoriented in the darkness. The terrain was unfamiliar and the night was filled with the sounds of battle. Some paratroopers found themselves miles away from their objectives, forced to navigate through enemy territory with limited supplies and no clear direction. Yet despite the confusion and heavy enemy resistance, the paratroopers fought with incredible courage and tenacity. They engaged in fierce firefights, often outnumbered and outgunned, but their resolve never wavered. Their training and camaraderie proved invaluable as they adapted to the chaotic conditions. Small groups banded together, often with soldiers from different units, united by their common objective. These ad hoc units displayed remarkable ingenuity and resourcefulness, using whatever means necessary to achieve their goals. They set up makeshift command posts, coordinated attacks, and provided mutual support in the face of overwhelming odds. Their actions in those crucial pre-dawn hours would prove essential in securing the flanks of the invasion beaches and disrupting the German response. By holding key positions and creating confusion among the German ranks, the paratroopers played a pivotal role in the success of D-Day. Their bravery and sacrifice laid the groundwork for the liberation of Western Europe. Section 5. Storming the Atlantic Wall. Utah and Omaha Beaches. At 6:30 a.m., under a sky thick with smoke and the deafening roar of naval bombardment, the first wave of landing craft approached the beaches of Normandy. The air was thick with tension and anticipation as the soldiers prepared to face the unknown. Each man knew the importance of their mission and the high stakes involved. The success of the entire operation hinged on their ability to secure the beachheads. On Utah Beach, assigned to the U.S. 4th Infantry Division, the landings were relatively successful. The soldiers, though anxious, moved with determination and purpose. They had trained for this moment, and their preparation paid off. The beach was secured with fewer casualties than anticipated, a small but significant victory in the larger context of the invasion. The German defenses were lighter than expected, and the tide had shifted the landing craft slightly south to a less fortified sector. This unexpected turn of events worked in favor of the Allied forces, allowing them to establish a foothold more quickly. The soldiers took advantage of the situation, pushing inland with a sense of urgency and determination. Omaha Beach, however, would become a scene of unimaginable carnage and bravery. The terrain was more challenging, and the German defenses were far more formidable. The soldiers knew they were walking into a deadly trap, but they pressed on, driven by duty and the hope of turning the tide of the war. The U.S. 1st and 29th Infantry Divisions faced a brutal onslaught from the well-entrenched German 352nd Infantry Division. The enemy was prepared and waiting, their machine guns and artillery ready to unleash hell on the approaching soldiers. The beach quickly became a battlefield, with every inch of sand contested fiercely. Machine gun fire rained down on the landing craft from heavily fortified bunkers overlooking the beach. The German soldiers had a clear line of sight and used it to devastating effect. The Allied troops were sitting ducks, exposed and vulnerable as they tried to make their way to the shore. The beach, littered with obstacles and mines, quickly transformed into a killing zone. Every step was fraught with danger, and the soldiers had to navigate a deadly maze of barbed wire, wooden stakes, and explosive devices. The chaos and confusion were overwhelming, but the men pressed on, driven by sheer willpower and the desire to survive. Many soldiers were cut down before they even reached the shore. The water turned red with blood, and the cries of the wounded filled the air. It was a scene of horror and heroism, as men sacrificed their lives for the greater good. Their bravery and determination in the face of such overwhelming odds were nothing short of extraordinary. Those who survived the initial assault found themselves pinned down on the beach, seeking cover behind whatever meager protection they could find as chaos reigned around them. The situation seemed hopeless, but the soldiers refused to give up. They fought with everything they had, inching forward, determined to break through the German defenses and secure the beachhead. Their courage and resilience in the face of such adversity would become a defining moment in the history of the Second World War.